So, how about you tell us now, Kalila, what is occupying your mind on this beautiful Wednesday morning?
Elections, actually. So I like to keep these things as mementos, and I go back to them. These are the manifestos of the political parties throughout the years. And so this one is the JLP's manifesto for 2016, and I like to reference it from time to time. At the point of midterm, which was sometime in 2018, I think, I did a review of what the administration had accomplished over the first 2.5 years of their term. And now that election buzz is in the air, I think it's an appropriate time to go back to the manifesto and to see what has been accomplished of the things that were promised. Because many times these things are just pretty glossy documents and people forget about them after the election, and many things just go undelivered. So I wanted to, as accountability, to look back at what was promised and to see what has been delivered now that we may be on the cusp.
Okay, I've been listening election. For your comment on whether what I see now being described by members of the administration as an aspirational target, the 5 and 4. I'll be listening whether that actually made it into the actual policy document that is the manifesto.
It was not in the manifesto.
Well,
that was a target made by the Economic Growth Council, if you recall, and Michael Lee Chin in particular, but it was not a manifesto promise. I do have some comments on it though. So I'm going to start with their promises on the economy. Over the next couple days or weeks, I'm not sure how long this is going to take me, I want to look specifically at the economy, crime, education, and health. Those are the 4 big areas. And then maybe we'll do some other areas because some other things are covered as well. But on the economy, they had that famed 10-point plan, if you recall. So let me just read through some of it, and I'll give you a checklist of, and you will know for yourself as well what has been done, what has not been done. So point number 1 under the 10-point plan, it says we will reform government and establish a Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Well, they did that. They established the ministry. The question is whether it has fulfilled its objectives. It says the new ministry will ensure that investments are rapidly facilitated to avoid government obstacles and duplication or working at cross purposes. This ministry will cultivate public-private partnerships to bring economic opportunities to life in the shortest possible time. It will ensure the coordination of resources to minimize red tape and maximize efficiencies, and it goes on in that vein. So whether this ministry that has been created has accomplished those objectives is a little bit hard to assess as an outsider. Have they minimized red tape and maximized efficiencies within the government? I don't work in the government system, so it's hard for me to tell. Have they avoided duplication? Have they furthered collaborations within and amongst ministries? I really can't say, but I give them at least half a point for doing what they said they would do and establishing the Ministry of Economic Growth and
Jamaica's
Job Creation.
Performance and the ease of doing business, would you look at that to make a call on whether bureaucracy or red tape has been eliminated to a significant degree?
But this speaks specifically to inside the ministries, inside the government. So the performance and ease of doing business, I would think, speaks more outside government. So how easy it is for businesses, for the private sector to conduct business. But there's another point that speaks to that. Point number 2 says we will immediately restore the benefits at the junior stock market to grow equity financing for startup and expansion of small to medium businesses. SMEs form the most stable base for job creation at the community level. They definitely get full marks for that. That was done, and it's been a resounding success. They have restored the full benefits to the junior stock market. Several companies have listed on the junior stock exchange since 2016. They've raised record levels of capital for these businesses. It's fostered growth and expansion in many industries, resulting in job creation.
And that came against the background of the then administration of which Dr. Phillips was finance minister, indicating that they basically were trending towards phasing out the junior stock exchange.
They had essentially phased it out. They had essentially cancelled the junior market under the IMF program at the recommendation of the IMF, saying that the junior stock exchange, the tax policies were too liberal because junior market companies don't pay corporate income tax for the first 5 years. And so the IMF said, do away with that. Audley Shaw and them said, we have to bring it back, and they did. So they get full points for that. Point number 3 says, we will reform the tax system. And this included the famed 1.5. And under that, they said they would reduce transfer taxes, stamp duties, and estate taxes. Those were all done last year in the budget. And then the second part of that was to implement the 1.5. So they said we will get rid of PAYE tax for everyone who earns a basic salary of $1.5 million or less. When workers take home more money, they spend more. More spending means more jobs. And we know that they implemented that 1.5 tax policy in 2 phases, starting in 2016 and phase 2 in 2017. So they get full points for that as well.
Would you take a point or two off because it was implemented with the introduction of a tax package, and that was not said in the manifesto, or not?
Well, they had to find a way to fund it.
All right, very well.
It had to be funded somehow or another. Point number 4, and recall as well, it was introduced with a tax package because what they had anticipated, where they had anticipated to get the funds,
oh yes,
that didn't
I recall that
exist
argument.
anymore. They had anticipated to find some money in I forget what it was called. Something to do with the gas tax.
Fund, yes.
Something to do with the gas tax. And then when they got into office, they realized that that's not how it worked. The money was in the consolidated fund, and they had to come up with a whole new plan. But they managed to implement it nonetheless, despite that setback. So point number 4 was to list several state-owned enterprises on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And the manifesto speaks specifically to the UDC, Urban Development Corporation, and Factories Corporation. Now, those 2 are yet to be done. I have yet to hear of any timeline for those 2 to be done. But what wasn't mentioned in the manifesto and what has been done is Wigton. And we know that Trans Jamaica IPO is coming very, very soon, possibly within days, certainly within weeks. And we've seen the impact of the Wigton listing already. That got thousands of Jamaicans interested and actively participating on the stock market. Wigton actually is one of the most traded stocks on the JSC on a day-to-day basis.
The Prime Minister called the socialization of
wealth. Right. So the impact of that has been transformational. And they're targeting even more investors with the Trans Jamaica Highway IPO. So for point number 4, I give them full marks as well. Point number 5 says we will fix Jamaica's water infrastructure. I don't know that I can give full marks or even any marks on point number 5. We need an update on this for sure. It says we'll make strategic capital investments in water. I know something was done. They had that MIA project run by the Israelis. From what I can remember, the project was downgraded. It was supposed to be a $5 billion project. I need a specific update to say out of what was proposed, how much was accomplished, where is our water leakage now, what they call it, loss-making. I forget the specific term that is used to describe it. Non-revenue water. Where are we now?
I think based on what I've seen in the print media, in particular the Observer, the Prime Minister's tasked the Minister without Portfolio, Colonel Charles Jr., with moving apace on the commitments made regarding the water infrastructure in the country, in particular the corporate area.
So, but we have...
Perhaps we should have him on one morning to give us an update.
The issue with the dams still silted. That still continues. We still have issues when there is a drought. Agriculture is still heavily impacted, resulting in a lack of economic growth. Whenever there is any water issue, there are water lock-offs nationwide. So I'm not giving them any points for fixing the water infrastructure. Point number 6 was to reform the NHT, Jamaica Housing Agency, and Jamaica Mortgage Bank. And we do know NHT rates were reduced by this administration. We heard that announcement in the budget, was it last year or the year before? We've heard Andrew Holness himself, who has responsibility for housing, being aggressive on housing starts, build more house. He has mandated the NHT, and indeed they have built more houses than ever. They've also taken the strategy to build up in terms of more high-rise buildings. They also promised in the manifesto to implement 50 to 60-year mortgage payments. I think that one remains outstanding.
Didn't the Prime Minister the last budget make some announcement regarding generational mortgages?
In the last budget?
His last contribution to the budget debate.
I'd have to check. I know it's something that's been discussed. I'd have to check if it's been implemented. And I think the generational mortgage would be the same thing that's referred to in the manifesto, the 50 to 60-year mortgage payments. But for the number of housing starts, the record number of housing starts that they've been able to do, and reducing NHT rates, I'm going to give them full points on that. Point number 7 was for a Special Council of Investment Ambassadors. Remember, Nigel Clark was initially appointed Ambassador Plenipotentiary, that fancy title, before he entered active politics. And then Auburn Hill was also appointed some other type of ambassador. I haven't heard of any others.
Paula Jarrett, I believe, was recently appointed.
Okay.
Similar ambassador.
And their job was to seek out large investors and bring them to Jamaica, saying that we must improve our international profile as an investment destination, not just a place to lend. I think that is starting to happen. We see the JSC Investor Conference coming up later this month. We see investments being attracted to Jamaica. I'll give them half a point for that one. Point number 8 was on jobs. Audley Shaw, if you recall, promised 250,000 jobs. At the time, I was very skeptical. He said that would be accomplished over a 6-year period. We're now less than 4 years in. I pulled up Statin's employed labor force numbers. In July 2016, we had 1,168,600 people in the employed labor force. As of July 2019, which is the most recent data available, we have 1,254,100 people in the employed labor force, which means 85,500 jobs have been added in that period of time. And that's 3 full years worth of data, which brings us to 34% of the number of jobs promised. So we're behind target, but we're doing well. It's still the best jobs numbers we've ever had. That 250,000 number was not in the manifesto. That was Audley Shaw on the campaign platform. It's still the lowest unemployment in history. We have thousands of new jobs set to come on stream very soon in tourism and BPOs. For that, I give them the full point. Point number 9 was on digital society. That's in progress. We just saw the announcement of laptops for cabinets. We see hotspots at public places, tablets in schools. Several business processes are now online, like the TAJ, company's office. I gave them half a point for that. And point number 10 was to revitalize and build town centers in cities. Kingston, the downtown, we're seeing that starting to happen. Vernon Field, which was promised in the manifesto, that hasn't been done yet. I'll give them half a point for that, bringing me to a total score of 7 out of 10. But there are accomplishments that are not mentioned in the 10-point plan. We graduated from the IMF program, reduced debt to GDP to less than 100%. We've maintained fiscal discipline. We have the best credit ratings in the history of the country being rated. And we haven't hit the growth target, that 5 and 4 that you mentioned. But the Minister Clark made a good point. We're seeing the effects of growth. Why do we want growth? For jobs and so on. And well, we're seeing some of the effects of growth. We're seeing infrastructure development. We're seeing jobs. So I'm going to give them a bonus point and bring it to 8 out of 10 on the economy. Next up will be our look at crime. That's what's on my mind.